bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The Cynic Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cynic Radio Podcast. Here your host, Cynic.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Agree?
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
This is the greatest show of all time.
We're back, everybody. Did you miss us? And this is episode 180 of the Cynic Radio Podcast. And I'm your multiverse-weary co-host, Cynic. And joining me, as always, my web-slinging friends, Igri and Ryan. And on this week's show, we're going to talk about the latest offering from Sony and their ever-growing Spider-Man universe that they're creating piece by piece as we break down across the Spider-Verse. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Ryan, Marvel's doing the multiverse. DC's doing the multiverse, and now Sony has already RSVP'd for the multiverse. With so many heroes in so many dimensions, at what point do we get to the tipping point before everybody, even before we get to Secret Wars?
It's funny. It doesn't bother me that much. I feel like maybe because these movies are so fun and irreverent, and it's the multiverse, but it's not really like it's weird. It feels different from like Doctor Strange or even The Flash, where like the multiverse-ness of it is like central to everything. It's like it's just there. They don't try to explain it or why it happens or what it is. It's part of it, and it allows us to see a million different Spider-Men, and they're funny and hilarious. So yeah, I think it's always about a good story. If you rehash the same device constantly, fine, as long as the stories are good, you can keep using it.
IG Marvel is beating DC to the punch once again, but we've seen the trailers for the new Michael Keaton Flash movie, because that's what it is. It's Michael Keaton Flash. I mean, is it a question of who does it better or who gets there first when it comes to capturing the hearts and minds of people's wallets?
I'm hoping for the Flash movie that it's not one of the things where the trailer looks amazing and the movie just takes a shit on us, right? Because it's happened where, like, especially with some of the DC movies, like the trailer looks amazing and then the movie comes out and it's not as good. Like the last Wonder Woman is a good example of that. The trailer looked really good, and then the movie was kind of so, especially compared to the first one. I think they're taking a really good chance, and maybe because they got Michael Keaton back doing Batman, and everybody loved that Batman, when he did the first two original like movie theater Batmans. So, I mean, Marvel already did it in Doctor Strange, and then they kind of showed some of that stuff in What If, so we've already seen some multiverse kind of things going on in Marvel for a while, and Flashpoint's a big comic series in DC, right? So it's not like they're coming out just trying to copy the thing. Like Flashpoint's quite a ways back. I think it was in the 90s when they did Flashpoint. So I'm hoping they do well, because Marvel has shown that they can. As much as I think Doctor Strange had problems, it was still a pretty good movie, and I really liked this one. Although I'm right with Ryan, they didn't spend a lot of time like really trying to nail like multiverse things, although there were some similarities like with the branches and like convergences and problems.
Ryan,
like
we did a little bit different this time. As we opened the movie, and it's not Miles, but Miles is crushed Gwen Stacy, as not only the narrator, but almost like a co-main character throughout the film. Was that a surprise to you that they went that route? It wasn't so Miles centric, and did it work?
Yes and no. So yeah, it was a surprise, and I don't think it works. So I think a lot works in this movie. I think there are two glaring things for me about the movie that I didn't love, and that was one of them because it's one thing if you have a prologue, and typically a prologue is something that's kind of outside the larger narrative, but that informs what happens during the story, and this wasn't really that. It was very much part of the larger narrative, but it went on for a really long time. And we're kind of like, we want to see Miles, we want to see what's going on with Miles. And so to get that scene, and it was really long, and it told a lot of story prior to getting going with Miles. I was a little bit like, I was looking at my watch and I kind of thought it was a weird way to start the movie, because there's a world where they start the movie with Miles and then you cut to that and nothing changes. So I didn't love that opening, and I don't think it worked all that well, because I just think it was, like I said, it was misplaced, and it would have fit perfectly fine after we were reintroduced to Miles.
Yeah, it kind of gave me pause for a second. I didn't mind it as much as you did. I actually liked her, or prefer her more of a character as a character than I do Miles. But I wasn't expecting it. I was like, oh, all right, well, this is interesting. And the way she was saying things, I wasn't quite sure if it was happening before the events that are taking place in the movie or after. But it was kind of a combination of everything once we saw it. But I wasn't expecting it, but I do feel like it did work. Now, IG, one of the most interesting things they did do was they gave every universe kind of its own look and feel, especially visually. Which one was your favorite and why?
I don't know, because like the Indian one was really cool because like basically India took over the whole world, because like Manhattan is like Mumbattan or something now. The Lego one was genius. I thought it was hilarious because like when he's like calling into the Spider-Verse to tell him things that are happening, he's just, because like everybody else, their stuff has real sounds, and he goes beep and makes beep noises when he engages the stuff to talk to them, and beep noises to turn it off. I thought that was hilarious. But there were a lot of good universes, and a lot of the universes were very similar to each other, but there were some that were just way out, which I thought, why not? Like then, and I know again, Doctor Strange did that already, but I like the way that they did it here. I mean, I think we even saw like the actual, like we saw a comic book one where things weren't really moving. They kind of looked like frames. We saw the Da Vinci looking Vulture, obviously. And then we even, I think, saw the original TV, like 1960s series world. I know we saw the Spider-Man, but we saw the world for a moment too, as they were moving through stuff. I think the way they built the Indian Spider-Man's world is probably my favorite, though. Like that really looked good. It's like, here's traffic and here's traffic here. And it looked really cool. It was really like dense. And I thought that was just something. I mean, I know New York City is a dense place. I've been there, but wow, was Mumbattan dense with just stuff going on all over the place.
How about you, Ryan?
I feel like it took all of them. No, I'd say the Renaissance one I liked a lot. I mean, I think visually everything it looked, they were so clever and creative with the visuals. But I think the Renaissance one was maybe my favorite. But I mean, you couldn't go wrong. And I think what was more impressive to me than the worlds is the characters, because the characters still retained the animation from their world, and I loved how seamless it was. You had like the Spider-Punk who's complete. I mean, just completely animated differently from everything else, but still fits in seamlessly, even when he's on screen in Mumbattan with all the other versions, or when So I feel like they just did an amazing job of playing with animation and making it all somehow work together, where you don't feel like really taken out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Not sticking on this Gwen subject, but I did like the way they did her world as well, as it being kind of more abstract and the color of the scenery changing due to their emotions. I thought that was kind of interesting. It was there was a lot of great choices, and that was one of the things that really kind of kept me into the movie. Now, Ryan, admittedly, I'm not a huge animated fan. I'm not a big animated feature guy. Like the previews for the other movies before this annoyed the hell out of me. But one thing I did enjoy was about animated movies is that they can cast anybody in any role. It's not a question of look. It's not a question of acting. It's a question of your voice, which I really, really like. So this must have been the most diverse cast in the world. which voice actors really worked for you? Which ones moved the needle?
Oof. I mean, there were so many great performances. I'm gonna say two. Daniel Kaluuya, Spider Punk was maybe my favorite in the entire movie. He was great. I didn't even realize it was him until at the end. It was like he was so much fun. He sounded like he was having a blast. And then Brian Tyree Henry, it's like he as his dad is understated, but he's one of I think he will go, 10, 15 years from now, he's one of the best actors of our generation. He's so good in anything he does, whether he's Paperboy or he's, watching this FBI show that he's in that's really good. I've seen him on Broadway. He's just such a great actor, and I love his performance as the dad. So I would say those are my two standouts.
How about you, IJ?
Well, those are really good choices and pretty easy to go that way. I really liked Andy Samberg's take on the Scarlet Spider, because he was all just moody and like talking about everything he's doing. It's like perfect pose. I'm looking at the wall. I thought, it was unexpected, and I wasn't even sure who it was until I looked on IMDb afterwards. I thought that was really good. And then Jake Johnson, because he's doing Peter B. Parker, right? The guy that basically got Miles going in his Spider-Man universe. He's somebody who you can tell, like, he's got a baby now. He still cares about Miles. He's still trying to do the right thing. And I think that he does funny things and heartfelt things at the same time. And I think he's a big part of the heart of this story. And I think that it shows, and his voice acting is really good.
Yeah, for me, it was probably Luna Lauren Velez as Miles's mom. She just has that voice. I mean, she's a very attractive woman outright, but she has that voice that it's like caramel. It's so sweet, and she was so endearing to Miles and some of the scenes. I really enjoyed that, and Oscar Isaacs as Miguel O'Hara was great. I mean, he just the perfect monotone. I'm the boss. When he explained things whenever that character was on the screen, you really couldn't take your eyes off of it. So I enjoyed those two a lot. IG, sometimes it has passed before we saw Miles last, right? I think they said a year and 4 months, but it may be more. Do you feel that, say, after a year and a half of being in the Spider-Man mantle, has he grown up at all? Has his story changed at all? Or did parts of it just feel kind of cut and paste?
I think some of it was kind of cut and paste because, he's still in high school and everything. And his world's Peter Parker is gone, right? So he is the only Spider-Man in his universe, or in whatever portion of his universe. And so he's still in high school, and where's all the rest of that? And obviously, his roommate, knows that he's Spider-Man, because it's not a big deal that he comes flying in through the window and is changing clothes in front of him and everything. And I wonder how many other people might know, but they just kind of glance over it, which is good and bad at the same time. But I think, they really were just kind of trying to skip over some stuff to get to some of the bigger story. I mean, this was still a 2-hour movie, and there was a lot packed into it. And I don't know how much better it would have been if we covered what he's been doing. I mean, they showed kind of like a quick scene of him flying around the city, and apparently every day on his way to school, he just stops 7 or 8 random crimes, and then goes to school for a little bit, and then goes and does some other crime fighting stuff, and still is able to maintain A's and B's in school. So, good on him for being so smart.
Ryan, the Spot as the main antagonist in the film, did it work? Did his powers transfer visually? Did he seem like a threat to Miles Morales?
Yeah, the spot I think worked great. It was. I thought that one of the more brilliant parts of the movie was that setup of him just being like a villain of the week, and him seeming to have these weird, kind of relatively, innocuous powers that then when you really stop and think about it, no, those powers can be extremely powerful. And so as the movie goes on and he starts to gain more power and realize his power, we start to see that, oh wow, he's really a threat. And so I really liked the way they did that. It really kind of did subvert expectations. That we saw featurettes on TV with the Spot, and it's like, okay, this is just a dumb character. So I really like that, and like the character and how they were able to develop that character is something that, again, is a legitimate threat to the entire Spider-Verse.
And I enjoyed too, as his power grew, he became more black and less white. It became more of a spot and less of a spot and more of a shadow, which that was really cool too. But I did enjoy the fight scene, even when he was the villain of the week, like how he was throwing punches and kicks from different portals. I enjoyed him trying to steal the ATM. I thought it was, him as a villain, it definitely worked. And I would actually like to see a little more of him on screen. IG, fun with the multiverse. We see Miles disrupt a canon event and save people who weren't supposed to be saved. Putting yourself in his tights and knowing what he knew, could you save a loved one knowing that it may undo your timeline?
That's an interesting question. I guess when you care about people, like sometimes you do things that maybe you shouldn't, that's like asking, you're there and it's like, hey, you can save your wife, but 100 people are going to die over here. Well, I love my wife. I don't know those 100 people. Like, am I going to do that? Yeah, I probably am, because, sometimes life is about who do you care about and who matters to you. And like, not that I want 100 other people to die, because I don't, but you kind of get life in tunnel vision a little bit, right? You're like focused on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And and that was a really heartfelt scene that, like, I thought, because, that was his Gwen, right? The Peter in the Indian Spider-Man world, that was his Gwen. So like, she was probably supposed to die, or her dad was supposed to die, the police captain, something was supposed to happen and it didn't. And then they showed like repercussions, something was happening, but they said, sometimes we can stop it. So somehow they figured out some other tech that they can put around the incursion hole and stop things from decaying. But in real life, I would probably say, if my heart is in it, yeah, I'd probably make some of the same choices.
I don't know if I'd want people putting tech around my incursion hole, but Ryan, I already know what you're going to answer this question, but I got to ask you, because not everybody knows you the way that I know you. The League of Extraordinary Amazing Spider-Man, very visually cool, but was it too much?
I'm curious to know what you think my answer is going to be. So okay, I feel like the entire third act was a lot, but I think given the tone of the movie, it was fun. I think for a lot of it, like I can get nitpicky with stuff sometimes, but for this, I wasn't, because it was fun. I think they did a really good job of playing with the different versions of Spider-Man, and it was fun. It definitely reminded me of Rick and Morty, and so that was always kind of front of mind. But I thought they did a really good job with it, and it was a lot of fun. Now, what did you think my answer was going to be?
That no, it wasn't too much. That it was a lot of fun.
Okay, good. All right.
I knew that you would enjoy it. And now me, on the other hand, and this is why we need to see some of these movies together, I thought it was way over the top.
Okay,
I thought it was a thousand Spider-Men too many. I didn't mind the last movie because we had a team, which we kind of get to see that team later in the movie. But in this, it was a village of Spider-Man. It was a city of Spider-Man. It was just too much to keep track of, and it felt a little too overboard for me.
Yeah.
IG, like I said, Oscar Isaac's smash up job as Miguel O'Hara. Understanding that he was in charge and he had to make the hard choices, and he had to try to stop Miles from causing another event. Were you getting some villain vibes from him? Is it possible that he's the antagonist in the next movie?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I left the movie at the end, and like my kids were talking about, oh, there's two villains. I'm like, there's three. What are you talking about? There's three villains in this thing. They're like, what's the third one? I'm like, 2099, Miguel, he's obviously a villain, because things are going to go his way or he's going to bring it all down. I mean, he was going to eat somebody early in the movie until a helicopter shined in his face. I really do think that, like, first of all, you're right. He is amazing. And like Oscar Isaac can voice act too. I mean, can we get a guy that doesn't have every special power in the world to be in some of these movies so I can feel a little bit better about myself? But wow, I really do think that he's got some serious villain tendencies, and I think that's gonna show up in the next one.
Now, the smash and repair style of relationships with all Spider-Man, Ryan, every single Spider-Man has a problem with whether it be whatever parental figures in his life or girlfriend or boyfriend. Uh, we saw very similar treks from Gwen and Miles kind of running parallel to each other. But did they do enough between the two of them with their relationships with their parents to make them different?
Yeah. I mean, it was. Yeah, they definitely they mirrored each other, and I think in each case where they have a secret, they want to tell the secret, they're afraid of the response. I think Gwen's more adversarial with the dad, obviously, because he thinks that she committed a crime, and I was actually it was interesting that he was ready to arrest her, and I wonder what made him kind of change his mind, later on. I don't know that they felt all that much different. Obviously, I think Miles got a bit more time as the movie went on. He had a few more heart to hearts with his parents, and I like that they're doing that because I think it captures what it is to be a teenager. Where you're starting to become a little rebellious, develop yourself. You might have different goals than what your parents want of you, and there is that struggle to figure out, how do I tell them what I want, and just learning how to communicate with your parents as an adult, because I think there's this point where they're always over you as a child, and there's that point where you're starting to come up to them and you're communicating with them as a peer and how to learn how to do that. So I think they did a very good job with Miles with that. Though with Gwen, I think once she and her dad have that kind of showdown, that's lost until near the end when she does go back. And it was interesting that she got to tell her dad who she was, but Miles has not truly had that opportunity yet. So I guess that's something we'll see down the road.
IG Miles should have made that left turn at Albuquerque as he outsmarts the whole Spider-Verse as a whole and makes it home. But the funny thing is he didn't. Did the whole swerve of him ending up in the wrong universe? Did you get tricked by it at first? And do you think that he'll be able to save himself from the Prowler, or do you think he's going to need help?
I got tricked completely. I did. I thought he was home, and then like the way they explained it was beautiful. Like his DNA basically is different because where the spider came from. I thought that was amazing, right? And then having himself be the Prowler now, like, was even another turn that I didn't see that coming. Like, I just thought that they made some really interesting choices there at the end that I think they didn't do wrong in that. I think that it was a really ingenious way to do it. And I don't think he's getting out of it without some help, because I think he's too much in shock with where he is and what's going on. And that he himself, given the right circumstances, has become a villain. So I think that, they showed the team up there at the end, and they're coming to save him, and he's going to need them to get anywhere out of this world.
Yeah, I really love that swerve. They had me. And it all connected right away when she didn't know who Spider-Man was. I was like, oh, because there's no Spider-Man in this universe. So him admitting that he's Spider-Man meant absolutely nothing to her. I thought maybe at first she was kind of having a go at him, or, fooling around. But or talking about cosplay just absolutely cracked me up. So yeah, they got me with that. But I realized pretty quickly what was going on, and I really honestly do feel like he's in a good deal of danger. I want to see a battle between evil Miles as the Prowler and Spider-Man Miles. So I hope we get that where it's more of a one-on-one competition. More of that Marvel with the main villain having the same power as the hero, right, Ryan? I know how much you love when they do that.
Well, they're obviously different powers, though.
Yeah.
They're not the same powers.
Well, we haven't
we
haven't seen the Prowler's powers yet. So
right, but his power is technology.
Yeah.
and like Spider-Man's power is now part of his DNA. So while there is some technology, because obviously Miles is smart, he's a physics genius. So there's some from both sides can be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, does Gwen rescue Miles? Does will the Spot kill Chief Morales? Honestly, we don't know because in the end they decided to go with a cliffhanger. Your
Yeah.
thoughts on that decision? Your final thoughts on the movie and your rating?
All right. So that was my second major issue with the movie, was that decision. I forgot if I knew at any point that there was a part 1 and a part 2. So I did not know that. And so that was like, that ending was a shock. And I think at the end of the day, it's clearly made to be like the second movie in a trilogy. Right? Like, you kind of backhandedly pulls in the first one, and obviously we're going to get the second one. Where it still does not work as the second movie in a trilogy is if you think about like Empire Strikes Back. That was still a complete film that stands on its own and had a beginning, middle, and end. It's just that the ending still left an opening for a lot for more story, but there still felt like there was an ending. Where with this, it was like it was build and build and build. You have this narrative momentum that's building, and then it's just off a cliff, we're done. And so I didn't love that choice. I think that if that was the choice they were going to make, it should have ended with Miles's escape. Miles's escape should have been made much more important. And then maybe you tag on that he's not in the wrong place or not in the right place. But the way it was done, where they really did, it's like act 3 is all build and then all right, see you next year. I didn't love that. That being said, overall though, I thought it was a fantastic movie, and in a lot of ways a step up from the first one. I think visually, I mean, the first one looked great, one of the best looking movies, and this one blows that out of the water. I mean, the visuals in this were just phenomenal. The action was great. It was really clever and creative with how they used action, how they used the different universes. This was just loaded with great performances. I mean, just down the line. I think we didn't even mention like the Spot is also another standout as a performance. So I think the movie just top to bottom has great performances throughout. It has the emotional beats that it needs. It has a lot of great action. While I think maybe it was a little clunky as far as how they started and ended it, the middle, it's really good. And I think it stands right up there toe to toe with the first one. I think on some level, a lot of this might be judged by how the next movie is. And if that turns out to be a dud, we may look back on this a little bit less. And if that turns out to be amazing, maybe we bring this up a little bit. But either way, I think it was a really, really great follow-up to the first one. And in a lot of ways took what we got from the first one and made it better. So my overall rating would be a 9.25.
Wow, getting tricky with it. IG.
So I really did enjoy the movie. I'm pretty high up there with Ryan. I like that they did some different things in this one, like with the different animation styles, and also including some live action things, right? Putting in like little scenes and having like, what's his name?
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover sitting in one of their jail cells, like, just hanging out there, and like knowing that he was in, the first Spider-Man movie with the first of the new Spider-Man movies, and so we're getting connections, right? It's building things that maybe we get some of these crossovers, and maybe we start to see an actual Miles Morales live action movie at some point, because I think that would be amazing. There's so many things that they did right in this movie, and a few things they did wrong. I thought the opening took way too long before we got anywhere near Miles. I thought the ending was just like Ryan said, it's like, we Thelma and Louise right off the cliff, and that was it. And I'm like, can we not cliff us that hard? Like, I understand being a cliffhanger and knowing that we have another one, but that was a really hard cliff to fall off of. And, but what are you going to do? I mean, I'm not in charge of the movie, and I think that all it's going to do is generate enough excitement for the next one that even if it is a dud, the opening weekend will make most of its money back. So they know what they're doing. I thought it was amazing. I thought that there wasn't even, I think, a bad voice acting portion that I came across. I think everybody who was acting in this did a bang up job. I think they made a great movie, and I was really excited to go see it, and it paid off. I enjoyed it. I'm probably right on par with the first one. There were some things that were better. There were some things that were worse. Most of the things that were better were just like visually better. So I don't think that the acting was better than the first or anything, but the story was a little bit better in the first. So I'm right where I was on the first one, and I think I gave that one a 9, and I'm right here at the same place.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with you guys. I begrudgingly saw the first movie due to peer pressure.
You're welcome.
This one didn't 100% land the way the first one did, but I still liked it. It was a really fun movie. It could have been shorter. I mean, it really could have. Ryan and I had the discussion when I was late to the game getting tickets, and I really did have a hard time getting tickets in 2 or 3 theaters in my area. So it's going to do well. It's going to be not only the #1 movie in America, but I'm pretty sure in the world. And it's got some stiff competition with the weeks to come, so I don't know how long it holds on to that title, but it's definitely going to win this weekend for sure. I hate cliffhangers, especially in movies. Now, I found out that the next one is only a year away, but that's still such a long time to wait to get the rest of the story. And that's part of the reason why I hate cliffhangers is I feel like they're selling the same story to you twice. Like, we've got all the elements except the question except the answer. So you're going to sell me the answer now too, which I'm not a huge fan of that. However, the things that worked, the cast absolutely killed it. From A to B, top to bottom, the cast was great. The visuals were great. The action was fun. It was just a home run. I think the weakest part of the equation was the story, and that's hard to overcome in some instances. I thought a lot of the Miles stuff was regurgitated. I thought we spent a little bit too much time in areas that we just didn't need to. Enjoyed the spot a lot. I mean, it was a fun night out. I'm invested. I'll be there when the third one comes out. I'm sure if we're still doing podcasts by then, we'll be covering it because you guys won't let me not do that. So I'm going to go ahead and give it an 8.5. And for the things that worked, and I'm not sweating the things that didn't. I don't know. I mean, it was a decent movie. I'll give it that. It was a decent movie. Guys, that about wraps up this episode of the Cynic Radio Podcast. I want to thank the listeners, especially our friends over in Europe and Asia. Our numbers keep growing there, and we appreciate it. We'll be back next week to talk about Ted Lasso Season 3. You can find the show at all the social medias at Cynic Radio. And if you want to question us, if you have comments, you want to, throw some love to IG's beard, any of that stuff, you can email us at cynicradio@gmail.com. And until next time, IG.
Don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cynicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.